San Francisco 49ers general manager John Lynch joined KMBR today to talk a bunch of different things, but two of the main updates that came from this interview were regarding wide receiver Jawan Jennings and wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk, obviously both dealing with injuries, one potentially dealing with a contract negotiation. Let's get into the Jauan Jennings update from general manager John Lynch. It is interesting because obviously, as we know, a couple days into training camp, Jawan Jennings strained his calf. We don't really have a ton of information on the severity of the injury. However, John Lynch did say there is no timetable for return regarding Jawan Jennings' calf injury. And again, you can interpret that as many different ways as you want. It could mean it's a serious calf injury. We know he was dealing with a calf injury during OTAs and mandatory minicamp. Maybe it was a re-aggravation. It's serious. Obviously, we understand. Probably 49er fans are a little bit sensitive to calf injuries after what had occurred to Christian McCaffrey and his bilateral Achilles tendonitis. We obviously saw the situation with Dre Greenlaw play out. So, it could genuinely be serious, or it could be contract related. When John Lynch was asked if it was or an update in that regard, he did not comment. He tried his best to say nothing. And obviously in these types of situations, saying nothing, I think, is an indication of something broader that is happening, in regards to a negotiation. We saw at the beginning of training camp, right, or right before camp started, Adam Schefter reports Jawan Jennings has requested a trade. All of a sudden, Jawan Jennings pops up at practice. Kyle Shanahan says, no, that never happened. He never requested a trade. Okay. But he still wants a contract. Like, let's be crystal clear on that. Just because you show up doesn't mean all of a sudden you don't want to get paid. So that is something to consider regarding this situation, and John Lynch declined to go into any detail. He mentioned that they want to keep that stuff inside the building, which, again, I understand from their perspective, but I do think it points to there is still something going on in regards to Jawan Jennings and a contract or a potential contract. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out and what happens for that moving forward. And obviously, as we know, the San Francisco 49ers have another wide receiver who's dealing with some injuries, and that is wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk. And I think you can interpret what John Lynch said in two different ways. He was still non-committal on providing a timeline for return for Brandon Aiyuk. But it doesn't sound like super optimistic about Brandon Aiyuk being available for week 1. However, he didn't rule it out. And that, to me, is where the optimism comes from. I think I've already seen other people reporting on this, like, Brandon Aiyuk likely to, not be ready for week 1. And I'm thinking of it from more of a different perspective. I'm like, if he wasn't going to be ready for week 1, I think they would know that already. And I think they would, really be able to understand a little bit better at this current stage, being about a month out from the regular season, where Brandon Aiyuk is. So I get it on multiple different levels. You don't want to set a timetable for return and be held to that timetable. The 49ers have, and I get it. They've said things about when a player should return or shouldn't return or whatever, and they get raked over the coals if the player isn't ready to go by that time. I think of Ricky Pearsall, who was injured in mandatory minicamp or around that time, wasn't able to play, and Kyle Shanahan says he should be ready by training camp. Well, training camp comes around, Ricky Pearsall is not ready, and a lot of the feedback that I heard from fans was, see, they lied to us. They said he was going to be ready, and it's just like, man, you can't really determine exactly when a player is going to return. You can project out, but the problem is if you put a date on it, people hold you to that standard. And we saw something very similar with Brock Purdy at the owners' meetings when you had John Lynch say that, Brock is trending towards being ready for week 1, and then the very next day, Kyle Shanahan comes out and goes, oh, no, no, no. Or I think what John Lynch said is he's trending towards being ready for the start of training camp. And then Kyle Shanahan came back the next day and said, oh, we don't know if he's going to be returned between week 1 and week 4 of the regular season. And it completely shifted the narrative. And I think it reset the expectation for the fan base of when Brock Purdy should return. And again, I think that just gave them a longer runway, and fans not freaking out about when a player should or should not be returning. Obviously, John Lynch was correct in his assessment that Brock was going to be available week 1 or for the beginning of training camp. But anyways, the point being is I'm taking the information that Brandon Aiyuk hasn't been ruled out as a positive. To me, that is a good sign. That they still haven't just said, yeah, we're week 4. He'll return. He'll start the season on reserve PUP, and week 5 will be his first opportunity to play in a game. The fact that they're not saying that right now, to me, is a positive, because they could say Brandon Aiyuk isn't going to be ready. We're going to put him on the shelf. Blah blah blah. And so the fact that they're still non-committal and still not officially ruling out week 1, I'm going to go ahead and call that a positive. So maybe I'm being a little bit too optimistic about that, but just based on the 49ers history of revealing timetable for returns and these injury things, and again, not ruling him out, I'm gonna hold out a little bit of hope. So we'll see. Again, I'm not gonna be disappointed if Brandon Aiyuk isn't ready to go week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. I think I'm setting the expectation for a mid-season return, because even if BA does return, we understand he's still gonna have to get into football shape. He hasn't been practicing. We saw what it was like for him coming back last year from the contract negotiation and not being a part of training camp. Took him about 4 weeks to get his legs under him. So hey, we'll continue to see how it goes and what comes of it. But overall, I think John Lynch had a lot of good things to say on KMBR today, and I liked it. I also posted a video of him comparing Rondé Barber to Upton Stout, which is a crazy comp, but I absolutely love it. You can go find that on the channel. And I'm heading to joint practices right now, and we'll see 49ers versus Broncos in action. The return of Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, DJ Jones, Mike McGlinchey, some familiar faces. So let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below, and as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.